This episode is about light, in specific, natural light or fixed artificial light. So we're not talking about added in lighting, flash, studio lighting or anything like that, fill-in light. What we're talking about is natural light and how to get the most of it. So, as you can tell at the moment, I'm actually in a car garage, a specialist place that actually deals in custom car restorations, race car conversions and everything else, called Thunder Road Cars. I can highly recommend it if you've got a sports car, or they're actually a pretty friendly bunch if you just want to pop down and have a look at some of the cars. They do even actually rent this space out for photographers, should a photographer be interested, although there is a few caveats about being careful with the cars. I'm sure that's not much of a surprise. Okay, now, when it comes to light, as you can see at the moment, I'm actually deliberately backlit myself. So I'm in shadow, the background's not. Now, it doesn't take much for me to walk away and the light on me has changed. Not much, but a little bit. I'm actually going to be going around taking some photographs and I will show you how they come out. Now, backlighting is a lovely way to go. So that means that the light is behind your subject. It gives a nice halo to hair and also rim lighting around the outside of your subject. It also allows to add a bit more contrast and a bit more interest and intrigue into the image. Now, also you can get obviously more traditional front lighting. So this is where the light source is in front of your subject or slightly to the side, which can create some interesting shadows depending on how it comes in. Again, I will be doing photographs that give examples of how this looks and how it affects your image. So it's basically the idea of this particular video is for you to look at the light and decide how to use it to get the best out of your subject. Now, I have to thank one of my Instagram followers, a lady called Bohemia, who actually asked this because she said a lot of photographers don't seem to grasp light. When you think about it, is what we are. I mean, photography basically is painting with light. So not understanding it, not knowing how to use it, can be a bit frustrating, especially when you're out there as a model, for instance, and you see this amazing light, it looks great, then you see the photographs produced and they're all flat and lifeless. Now, some of that could be down to editing. Now, again, there's always this talk about straight out of camera or edited. Straight out of camera is always a weird one because, I go back to film days. So during those days, the photographers would bemoan the people that went to the mini labs or sent their film off to be processed. So how can they call themselves proper photographers? They don't even print their own works. Of course, now you've got how can you call yourself a photographer? I send my film off and it comes back and it's all done for me. I've done it correctly in camera. Yeah. There is a lot to be said for getting as much right as you can in camera, because it means there is less that you need to do. But I will go into an editing bit at the end of this one into how to get the most out of things. Now, photographers, ever since photography first came out, have been learning using light and editing the final results, whether it's come from actually how they develop the negatives, because that will change the effect of contrast, softness, sharpness, whether you get reticulation, which is an exaggerated grain effect, to when you're actually then doing the printing, where you can actually use dodging and burning, where you can do multiple layers, where you can actually print on different subjects. You can even print an out of focus one, flip it over and shine the light through on the paper to create a sharpening effect. It's called unsharp mask, which interestingly is also in Photoshop. I wonder where they got the idea from Photoshop. Right, anyway, on with this video. I will take you through a little walkthrough and show you some of the garage, and then I'm going to go and take some photographs and you'll see the images and I will bore you a little bit more with some more information. Okay, see you soon. Right, well, as you can see from the lights taken in the workshop with the engineering machinery, by shooting with the light behind, or mostly behind, our main subject actually comes out a bit darker, and we have these nice little edge lighting, and it's very dynamic, almost to the point of being low key, which is where there's more blacks and dark in the image than lights. But on the ones where you notice I can actually swap to the other side, it's a very different look. It's much flatter. It's a lot more of a neutral look to the photograph. And so this is literally, all I've done is I've moved a quarter of a turn effectively on those images, especially the ones with the drill bit. And also, as you saw with the cut-off saw, from one direction to the other direction, it makes quite a difference. Oops, and I'm moving. There we go. Apologies for that. I'm not going to film it again because I'm lazy. I've got a limited amount of time. Now, as you say, these images are straight from the camera. They haven't been edited yet. You'll now see the ones where I have actually done a little bit of editing to them, mostly for color grading, and also just a little bit to enhance the parts of the image that I want to stand out. In some ways, actually making it how I saw it when I was photographing it. This is one of the things that, for me, what editing is about, is to actually show the person looking at the images what I saw when I was taking the image. Sometimes I go more artistic and go a bit more creative and do some silly and zany things, but more often than not, I want to replicate what I see when I'm taking the photograph. Cameras are phenomenal at recording the information that comes into them. But quite often, I mean, the amount of people I know that have said, they take a photograph, they get the pictures back, they look at the picture on the computer, and it's like, it doesn't look anything like it was. That's where editing comes in, because the camera, even if you shoot straight at a camera or on a JPEG, guess what does the editing? The camera. It will actually decide by comparing the entire image what it thinks the contrast range should be, the color tones. It's quite surprising exactly how much the camera will edit a JPEG, unless you have your scene mode, I believe it's called, on Canons, and there's just something similar for Nikon as well. And you can set those for vivid, for colourful, for muted. I like having mine on just neutral, so it's effectively just as the sensor records it, which is why I shoot in RAW. That's for another video. But say if you do shoot in RAWs, just remember your images are going to look very dull, very boring, and very flat, because no editing of any kind has been done to them. So that's something to think about. Anyway, here is the edited images. This second set of images was taken from the workshop, or the shop floor, where all the cars are. Well, you'll probably figure that out once you actually see all the photographs of cars. Now, this is something different again. Obviously, the artificial light was on because it's actually quite late in the evening there when I'm actually photographing. Which does lead to some interesting lights and reflections. We've also got the challenges of there's different types of light temperature. There's still a little bit of natural light coming through the window lights, as well as the more yellowy green hints from the artificial tubes. They've got some very strange fluorescent tubes. They're not the usual green, they're a yellowish green. Probably because they're absolutely covered with all sorts of gunk and muck. So that will add an interesting change to color images if you're shooting them. But what I was trying to do in these ones is showing you how you can actually get the best out of the image by choosing an angle that will allow the light to show off your subject in the best way possible. As you can see with one of the cars, I got to a very, very low angle. I also went for detail shots. The engine bay photograph actually works quite well with a more neutral straight on light, whereas the ones of the cars themselves, they're often much nicer if there's a bit more directionality to the light, so it comes from a specific source. So again, I'll show you these images straight from the camera, and I will also show you the edited versions as well. I hope you like it, and at a later date I will actually be connecting up my computer for doing screen recording, so as I can actually show you exactly what I do in Lightroom and Photoshop. I do also use Affinity and a few other software, imaging editing software as well, but I do tend to mostly use Lightroom and Photoshop. Okay, well, enough of me waffling. Here's the cars.